Hello, welcome back, everyone. And this time around, different face for the podcast. I know I had to jump in very quickly for Julian, but nevertheless, it's not going to change anything about the topic today. As we have someone very interesting here, Pascal. You're actually the first guest on the podcast, and now you're making a comeback. But I wanted to kick things off, obviously, with people who don't know you. And you're a Bitcoiner who works in a bank. How is your day-to-day there?
Yeah, hey Joel, that's a great way to frame it. I'm actually, I'm a true Bitcoiner, and I'm not a banker because I have not had any bank upbringing, so to say. You know, it's really been that I ended up there, and I was fully self-employed before the bank as well. You know, I had my own company, it was going well, and so I get this question asked a lot. How did you end up working for a bank now? You know, isn't that the wrong way, or the other? Shouldn't it be the other way around? And yes, how did it end up, or how did I end up working at a bank? I was just in Bitcoin, crypto, so to say, for the past 9 years already. And as I said, I have my own company, which was sort of a crypto research company. I did a lot of research and analytics stuff for different types of companies throughout the space, but then also asset managers. And at some point, I was approached by this bank, which is in Switzerland. It's a private bank, and they have been in Bitcoin for about 5 to 6 years now as well. And it's been quite a long time, and they're really big when it comes to corporate clients. So they're banking way over 500 companies now from within the space. So it's quite big, and they wanted to also scale up their private side of things, you know, with the clients that they have. And then also when it comes to investment management, pitch Bitcoin to these people, have them invest into Bitcoin. And that's where I'm coming in. And so they approached me, and I felt like, yeah, that's a cool thing. You know, I really like the team. I like the people there. And so I ended up, at least part-time, I'm now employed by the bank, and I enjoy doing it. It's just great because I also learn along the way.
Yeah, and the other part-time, you're also actually in front of the camera a lot. You are also the host of your own show. We will obviously link everything below the video, but maybe also give us a little breakdown of what your podcast is about and what motivated you to start that as well.
Yes, thanks for pointing this out as well. So, as I said, I've been in Bitcoin/crypto for about 9 years. Really got into it because of the whole Austrian economics topic. You know, I was a firm believer in Austrian economics. I still am. I still really love the roots where I'm coming from. Nowadays, I would say I broadened my perspective as well, just because I think it's important to not just stick with one theory your entire life, because then you can sort of get all the different blind spots, you know, that sort of maybe is not what I'm sort of used to. Also in normal life, and that's why I expanded my perspective in that way. But that's how it started. I started out as Austrian economics, monetary history lover, theory lover, and everything. And yeah, then that's also where I discovered Bitcoin, so to say. And because I was in this space for so long, I always wondered, like, okay, I know so many people from back in the day, you know, the Nick Carters of this world, the Lynn Aldens. I mean, I'm not best friends with them, not by any means, but I've communicated with them back in the day through Twitter, through X, through Telegram, you know, and we had like stuff, we would go back and forth, juggle ideas when it comes to Bitcoin and macro. And at some point, they all exploded when it comes to their followership, so to say. And that's where it dawned on me, well, maybe I can get them in front of a camera and talk to them just how I would talk to them through X and Telegram. And this way, other people could listen in as well, and they might gain some value from this. And so that's why I started the podcast, Less Noise, More Signal, maybe, around 9-ish months now. It's 9 months since it started, and it's going well. And I just really love to digest or really go deep into the whole macro topic, finance at the intersection of Bitcoin. I also like to talk about stable coins and just how everything is coming together. So it's not your typical Bitcoin only podcast, but obviously me being a Bitcoiner and having my heart there, I always try to weave it in where possible. And that's where I think I've managed to do some great shows that also helped me in understanding the world a little better.
Yeah, and as we can see behind you there, you are also a author. You've actually written a couple of books before that, and your latest now is the Bitcoin Enlightenment with Ricardo Salinas, obviously a very famous, very vocal Bitcoiner out of Mexico.
Yeah.
Maybe let's dive a little bit into the book quickly before we then move on into Bitcoin in banks and maybe on Wall Street. How did the book come about? And first of all, how did you land that writing gig? Because I can imagine there's a lot of fascinating stories to tell when it comes to Ricardo.
Yeah, that's also a very fascinating story in the end. You're saying it right, and it's also sort of still unbelievable to me how we managed to pull this off, because as I said, I don't have a huge following. I'm not that well known abroad or outside of Switzerland. But when I was traveling around as a digital nomad, that's also something I did just because I wanted to really figure out how it is to live as a sovereign individual. Maybe not having any sort of attachment to any government, to any apartment, to one place at once, So that's where I wanted to decentralize my life as well, at least for a couple of months. And I ended up doing it for 2 years almost. And so that's where I also went to Mexico. In Mexico, I was in every country that I went to, I looked up online who's interesting to talk to when it comes to Bitcoin. And in Mexico, obviously, all over the internet, Ricardo Salinas showed up. And so I thought I would love to talk to that guy, but how could I reach out? And there I connected with Ricardo's team. Oh, there's a fly here. Sorry. I connected through Ricardo's team, and I obviously gave him some snippets in terms of Austrian economics and monetary history that we could talk about, And I think that really piqued his interest because he actually, after me hitting him up several times through his team, would you like to talk to us? Then at some point, he reached out and said, yeah, come to our office, we'll do an interview. And his team was like, dude, you are a nobody knows you. Why would he even accept this offer? He turns down all the offers from CNBC, Bloomberg. There must be something special about you. And I would say there's nothing that much special about me. It's just that I love to talk about these topics that sort of are dear and near to his heart as well. And it is, again, libertarianism, Bitcoin, Austrian economics. And so that's really how it came about that I ended up recording this video with him. And then afterwards, also the book grew out of this because once we did the video, which is still up on YouTube, I was I just asked him if he would be down to writing a book together. And he agreed as well. And so that's how we ended up writing this book together.
Nice. I like, obviously, as someone dealing with the press at Relai an awful lot of times, I can sympathize with the press people side of his team, but obviously good on him that he did that, and it ended in a big book. And yeah, if you've ever been to a conference in the last 2 months, I would say, you've seen the book somewhere around. I know Saifedean's, his team is obviously also pushing it. So if you're curious for another read, the Bitcoin Enlightenment will also actually link it below. But Pascal, to not talk about books and shows and stuff all the time, because I think it would be a snooze fest for our listeners, I really want to get down into the first topic of, you do work in a bank. As you mentioned, you serve a lot of companies in the space. Baumann Maerki is very much involved there. What do you see currently? Because this bull run, it's a weird one. We do see institutional interest. I would argue it's already been there a little bit before, but now we see it really amplified. And suddenly you see price ripping, we get new all-time highs, people are numb, retail is missing out, but banks are in. Can you maybe give us, without sparing any details, the insight into what your day-to-day looks there and how you guys think about that adoption?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I have to say I only joined the bank about 1.5 years ago. So I don't have that much experience when it comes to like prior history in that sense. So one could argue I only just joined when when the bull cycle actually got going. So I only have that sort of experience. But I would say, I think from what I also hear when I talk to people at the bank who've been longer with the bank than me, they tell me that this ETF announcement, that this has really changed a lot, and we hear it from other people as well, that they really think like BlackRock and the bigger people moving in, they're really the ones that are moving the needle. Because the interesting thing is that the bank, and my boss included, he's been all over Bitcoin for several years, and he's also pointed out all the beneficial portfolio characteristics that Bitcoin brings when you add it to a traditional portfolio, that the Sharpe ratio goes up, which is sort of saying that you get a bigger return for the same amount of risk, so to say, so like the return goes up faster than the volatility of the portfolio, which is a nice thing for people, and that it really functions as a diversifier in a traditional portfolio, also because it has like sort of different performance drivers, for example, the halving or other things that are still associated with Bitcoin, at least to this day, that's sort of driving the price, even though there's lots of discussion going on if this is really the case. But I mean, that's really the thing, and he that's what he tells me all the time. He's like, now you have BlackRock and Fidelity writing papers about this, and we've said this 5 years ago, and nobody listened, But there you can really see what that it really makes a difference that these people are now on board as well. Wall Street as of such, because their word just carries more weight in the end, But that's really something that we're seeing, which also then helps us again, with our traditional client base, obviously. We do have like a diverse client base as of now as a bank. What is very interesting is that in terms of clients, because we onboarded a lot of crypto companies and Bitcoin companies, we sometimes also onboarded their founders, which are then also now banking with the bank like personally. And this really helped us to bring down the average age of our client significantly, So it's down like 15 years, I think, or 12 years or something, 12 to 15 years, something in between, which is quite nice for a traditional private bank, And so
I just imagine the like the YOLO crypto bro on one end, on the other hand, the well-established Zurich family who's been with the bank probably for like 200 years or something.
Yeah,
That's cool.
Yeah. That's kind of cool. It's also cool when we have these tech banking meetings, how we call it, where all the people come together, like the clients, the younger from the crypto space, and then maybe also the older folks, who are now also interested. It's always a great mix at these sort of parties, where we bring these people together. And so that's very interesting to see. And then at the same time, we have the older folks, that we try to orange pill, and where we try to really tell them about the features and all the advantages Bitcoin brings for a portfolio, as I said. And they are opening up as well. That's what we can see, because they're now hearing, okay, it's in Switzerland, it's in Europe, it's in the US, everything is opening up, so I might as well have to have some exposure, What's very interesting there is that a lot of people still stick with Bitcoin, that's the third thing they want to do. It's really like, okay, I'm all fine with Bitcoin, having some exposure, then maybe some Ethereum. That's what people also have heard about. But then further down the risk curve, they don't want to go. Which I think also makes total sense for a traditional investor like the one we have, or a traditional client, which is sort of more risk averse. And so that's what we're seeing as well, that people are moving into the space. But then at the same time, what we're also seeing is obviously people that have made a lot of money in Bitcoin or crypto and are now now that we've reached these prices, that they are sort of saying to themselves, well, I might take some chips off the table because obviously some of them have made significant amounts of wealth, which are like really life-changing money, so to say. And that's why they're also divesting in that sense. And that's where we help as well. And that's certainly something that we see a lot going on as well, which probably talks to the narrative that you hear a lot, like, why is price not going up faster? Who's selling? I can tell you there's a lot of people out there, and also like real Bitcoiners who just want to take some chips off the table because, they've made life-changing money, and now, this is really something that helps them enjoy their life more,
Yeah, I think it doesn't matter which on-chain platform you look at, CryptoQuant, CoinGlass, is it called CoinGlass? Just any of these on-chain metrics, guys. You do actually see that there's a lot of whale pressure as well in terms of selling. You saw it very specifically last week and the week beforehand, and now you start seeing this again. And then on the other hand, you just don't see retail catching up. We're always catching up at Relai, obviously. Retail not catching up. And you get into these weird things. And we've seen a similar approach. We had significantly higher sell orders in the last, I would say, 3 to 6 weeks, depending on a little bit, obviously, if you cross-check with the price. And it's not as much as we anticipated. So we do still see further buying side on the retail side of things. But then again, we're much smaller sample size to what you guys do. But for me, you go into 2 interesting angles. So the first angle is the sell pressure, which I want to get into. And then the second side of things is the whole establishment on Wall Street through the likes of BlackRock. With the sell stuff, you did mention now, you obviously also see OGs, they take the chips off their tables and they get into this. Do you also see on the other hand, okay, client X sells, and then on the other hand, we see, 10 companies getting on board? Or is it really just it's just a sell-off phase now in the markets, and the whole establishment is there to basically say, you know what, we're just going with the flow here. We take our wealth out, and then we'll see what happens next.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I can't talk to specific clients, but sure. That's something I have to probably say here. But I mean, the thing is, we do see some buying going on as well, and I'm sometimes surprised who it is, so it's not only like individuals, it's sometimes also different entities or smaller like community gatherings and stuff, that we have Vereine, we call it here in Switzerland as well, stuff like this, and they are dabbling now in Bitcoin as well, just because they feel like, okay, I've gotten it, the argument with digital scarcity, and then also the inflation that's going on, I have to sort of protect. And it seems to be the fastest horse, because I keep on seeing this thing coming back. If it really were a tulip bubble, it wouldn't be coming back for the 5th time already, after a max drawdown of like 60% or something, and so that's where it sort of dawns on them, okay, there has to be some merit to this thing, and that's why I have to check it out, obviously, and so that's what we're seeing as well. But then on the other side, when it comes to the selling people, I mean, this is usually just very lucky, I would say, or that's maybe the wrong word, but just like people that have been in Bitcoin very early. Maybe it wasn't because out of pure luck, maybe because they really had diamond hands, and held for that long of a time, but it's usually like buy and hold people who have really invested, and then they just held for multiple cycles, and now they feel like, okay, it's time to take something into fiat. So I have some less volatility there. I can also maybe earn some return in terms of a dividend or interest on it, and so that's what we're seeing as well. And in that case, it's usually just Bitcoin. That's also what I find really interesting. It's like this dichotomy for me. When you talk to Bitcoin maxis on X, Usually they're all over Bitcoin, but then many of them, and I know some of them personally, they dabble in crypto as well, especially now that the price is going up again. They're like, yeah, maybe some altcoin trading, you know, which helps me to generate some more Bitcoin further down the road. I want to do this. And so that's where I sometimes sort of have to laugh, you know, because up front they're like Bitcoin maxis, but then they have some alts in their portfolio. The other way around, it's very interesting to have people at the bank who don't call themselves Bitcoin maxis or prospects or potential clients. They're not Bitcoin maxis at all, but their portfolio is like 90% in Bitcoin, which also goes to show like they would never call themselves the maxi. They dabbled in some other things, but the reality just leads you to Bitcoin further down the line, because at least when it comes to performance over a long period of time, it's the most stable thing, the most liquid thing, and the thing that probably most adoption is also happening because it's easier to do something with Bitcoin at the bank than with any other cryptocurrency. When it comes to like borrowing against your crypto or other stuff, most of the banks are really starting out with Bitcoin, and for some, for the foreseeable future, I would also say they pretty much stay with Bitcoin, you know, and so that's also interesting just to see, like sometimes, as I said, you know, the people are very vocal, but then their portfolio looks a lot different, and it goes to both sides, so to say.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, all roads lead back to Bitcoin. So do you really have to call yourself an enthusiast, maxi, whatever you want to say? If it's inevitable anyway, you know, you can enjoy the journey there. And speaking of that journey, we've also seen this, and I now want to get into the BlackRock stuff specifically. We did see kind of that journey with Larry Fink specifically. He used to downplay Bitcoin. Now they're, I would say, arguably the biggest Bitcoin bull in institutional investor side of things. You mentioned the people at the bank working before you there really saw the push since the ETFs. Has there also changed the significance of Bitcoin in the Swiss financial landscape? Because after all, with the bank, you guys are part of this. I guess your offices are close to Paradeplatz, so I imagine you're quite central in the hub of finance in Switzerland. Do you notice anything there that suddenly other banks go like, you know, we might as well take a look at it, or like these Baumann Maerki guys, they're quite good in this, we'll speak to them?
Yeah. Well, one thing is for sure that I think a lot of people working at other banks who are maybe already from the first, or like how would I say it, already naturally sort of inclined to be open to crypto and Bitcoin, they are the ones working at other banks, but then are coming to us and asking for advice, and are like, well, how are you guys doing this? Is there even a job for me available? You know, because my bank is still not moving there, you know, and so that's sort of what we're seeing a lot. It's also that we get a lot of prospects, you know, from other banks, you know, that we hear like, I knocked on the door of another bank, and they don't know how to operate. They want me to sort of bring them a 70-page report that makes sure that the money is all fine, and I don't know any further, and so they come to us because obviously the word makes its round, you know, that we at the bank are very proficient also when it comes to the entire team that we have. You know, we really have like blockchain analytics people, you know, forensic people who can really look into the blockchain itself and then evaluate, okay, this is all legit, and so we can proceed with that potential prospect. And so that's what we're seeing as well. In that sense, I think a lot of banks are still not moving, and I feel like it's really because the C-level is not interested. They don't have any incentives, you know. They feel like, okay, it's still sort of a risk, or I mean, I don't know, we are too good, we're still doing too well in order to be pushed to do something like this. And then you have like smaller banks, cantonal banks, and I think most of these banks who are now also in the industry and provide Bitcoin services, it's because of individual people that sort of kick that off within the bank. You know, we also have a chapter in the book, chapter 7, where we write about this, that Bitcoiners be the change you want to see happening in the world. And that's exactly what we see, like people like you and me, we've been in the space for so long. And at some point we're like, okay, now we also personally amassed enough credibility that we can talk to people, that we maybe can move the needle in some areas. And I think that's happening more and more across the world, but also in Switzerland. And then you see people out of these institutions really, as I said, moving the needle and pushing the envelope further. And that's really an individual task and in the end also achievement, And so wherever you have these people and they keep on pounding the table about it, hey, we have to do something, then you bring forth the argument, you can really lay out a business case, and you have somewhat changing maybe C-level people, then that's your opportunity. And I think we will see more of that. But where this is not happening, where you don't have like these dedicated individuals, and where maybe C-level is still the same old people from like 10 years ago, I dare say that nothing is changing there. And so it's sort of nuanced in the end. But I think the more time goes, the more we will see sort of people coming online and banks coming online as well.
Nice. And I just realized halfway through, I've always been calling the name wrong. It's actually Maerki Baumann and not Baumann Maerki. I'm sorry about that if any one of your PR department watches, mistakes happen. What I found fascinating was one of your statements. You do see general interest in Bitcoin. Okay, this is the big thing. It's established. Clients accept this. They then move down to Ethereum. But in Bitcoin specifically, I have friends who work in the finance sector, obviously being Swiss-born, you have these kind of friends. And most of them are more curious in the ETFs. I imagine because it's an environment they're used to and they know what's going on there. You guys, I imagine, you obviously help out with the custodian side of things for your clients, but do you see general interest more on, hey, we want Bitcoin, but we want the ETFs and not spot Bitcoin? Is it more 50-50, or do clients in general just don't care and say, we want Bitcoin, we don't care how we get it done, and then they approach you?
Yes. Yeah, it really, again, depends on the sort of client that you're talking to or the prospect. I mean, usually what we do really the spot-driven things, So if somebody comes to our bank and really wants to invest through us, we do buy the actual Bitcoin, It's not the ETF itself. And so that's what we also pride ourselves on, that we have like a segregated wallet for individual clients. And so it might not be not your keys, not your Bitcoins, but it is at least your segregated wallet, which gives you some more flexibility and at least somewhat the feeling that you still are, that these are your Bitcoin, so to say, And so that's what we're seeing as well. Some of the clients who sort of have been in Bitcoin further or for a longer time, for them it clicks automatically and they're like, wow, that really what attracts me to your bank. You seem to be understanding the ethos here. Others from the traditional world, again, they like, I don't even care. I don't even fully understand what you mean here. I just want to have Bitcoin in the end, probably as cheap as possible. And that's where then the ETF is very hard to beat, because like of the volume, of the liquidity, the brand with BlackRock, it's sort of really, really cheap way to access Bitcoin. And so again, it's very diverse and depends on the client, what he wants. But for us, it's like we do offer everything. If somebody wants to buy IBIT, we can do it. But personally, we obviously tell them to go on chain because you want to have the real Bitcoin, so the real stuff, so to say. In the
Nice. I also want to move to like the closing segment of the show, but one topic I really had at the top of my list today, Pascal, is you mentioned we've both been in Bitcoin for a long time, and we did speak about that perception of people being very vocal pro Bitcoin. The word hybrid Bitcoinization often comes up there. And at least lately, it's been on my mind with this synergy between Wall Street, institutional interest, and Bitcoin. is there really a future where everything gets traded, priced, used in Bitcoin? Or will we somehow have like a mix between maybe Bitcoin-backed stable coins and things like that, or Bitcoin-backed currencies? There are already ideas out there. And I'm fascinated by your approach because, as you mentioned, you do speak to these kind of people who really go down the rabbit hole of these concepts also on your podcast. And I imagine the interest is there within the bank as well. Where do you see this hyper-Bitcoinized world heading to?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, that's really a question that I'm asking myself as well, you know, because obviously one part within me would probably love to live in a Bitcoin hyper or in a hyper Bitcoinized world, you know, where Bitcoin is really like the lingua franca, so to say, when it comes to financial services and everything. But then at the same time, I feel like I'm not sure if this is ever going to happen, you know, just because people are so diverse and they might not even care about it the same we Bitcoiners care about it, you know. Because one thing I have to say, what's also very interesting within the bank, even though some people are not that close to Bitcoin, they intuitively understand the difference between Ethereum and Bitcoin. They also tell me, okay, it makes sense, digital scarcity. Yes, I mean, Bitcoin is more established in that sense, and Ethereum is a totally different use case. It's just that they maybe think this other use case, there might also be some merit to it, you know, and that's why they want to dabble in it. It's usually the case because they feel like, okay, this is maybe a chance to make more money, because there's still more upside. So all these sort of things play in there, and I think that's what will always be the case. You know, that people will always look to other things, and in the end, yeah, maybe incentives will drive us there. That at some point, you know, as I said, because that's another thing that we're seeing. In the end, everyone really ends up holding Bitcoin. It's usually in a long enough time scale, things lead to Bitcoin. But then I would imagine there's always something new coming, you know, and Fiat is always being retried again. Because it's also, and I had this discussion recently with somebody on X, that it's probably closer to human nature in that sense, you know, because if we really were to live in a Bitcoinized world, you know, where everything would also be deflationary, you would have no credit, it's just like one base money. I'm not sure if I really want to live in that world, you know, because, then you can really not react to if something happens from the outside, you know, an exogenous shock, so to say, you know. And that's usually what Bitcoin is then saying, yeah, but the market will solve everything. Well, maybe in the long term, yes, but in the short term, no. And people are very short-sighted, you know. They care about the short term. They really want to be safe now, and not if shit hits the fan and you're like down whatever percent and your life depends on it, and somebody comes to you, yeah, don't worry, the market will sort it out and you will be fine in 3 weeks' time. That person is like, well, I have to feed my family tomorrow. I can't care about the long-termness of your argument, you know. And that's why I think Fiat is then the way of also pulling forward some productivity from the future through going into debt, and maybe excessively into debt. And obviously, I don't want to speak up for the fiat system as a whole, because I think it's going in the wrong direction. But at the same time, I feel like it's just a human necessity that we have that sort of system where we can also, as I said, pull productivity from the future, and maybe if we do some sort of mistakes, we have some levers to pull, which again is probably in the grand scheme of thing unjust, you know, because some people are not benefiting while others are, because the ones that can pull the levers are the ones that are benefiting. But it's just very close to human nature, and that's why I think something like hyper-Bitcoinization will never really make it, because as long as humans are there will also be fiat, I would assume.
Yeah, or I think to now be a little bit of the devil's advocate, you would potentially then see a divergence between things, which is what we're granted are seeing now with these Bitcoin treasury companies, where Again, a few people work there who have been very vocal on social media about a lot of things, and then they go in and they use the fiat instruments that you have as a public company, which are vastly different than any instruments you can have as an individual, and have a simple goal to just buy as much Bitcoin as possible to increase the Bitcoin per share metric, and to therefore, kickstart I wouldn't say the new economy, but a new way of actually looking at finance and the evaluation of companies. And maybe if you think about a much broader scale in terms of currencies, this could be something similar with fiat. And whenever I speak within Bitcoin communities, I'm usually fascinated that in the end, like you said, your banker friends who are not Bitcoiners, they kind of see that picture, they kind of see that future. They go like, I guess at least my local currency in my country would be backed by Bitcoin, but it obviously wouldn't be the same as having Bitcoin natively.
Yeah, exactly. No, and that's a great point. And I really think some people call Bitcoin the cheat code, or the monetary glitch, that lets you disproportionately take advantage of what's happening or what's wrongly happening in the fiat system, and then you can take advantage and profit off of this, And I think this is exactly what's happening, And I think to some extent fiat will always find a way to sort of persist, But then again, Bitcoiners will always find a way to profit off of this, and also protect themselves. For some, it's a protection. For others, it's more of a game, like really make as much wealth as possible by using this monetary glitch that's possible nowadays, or the cheat code as we called it. And so that's really what I think will be happening. And that's why we're seeing all these treasury companies popping up. That's why we're seeing more and more people dabbling in the space. And in the end, I think there will be a mixture, a coexistence of everything, which also means you can sort of decide yourself with I want to have both legs in both worlds, or one leg in that world and the other one in that. And this way I can navigate in both. And that's probably what I'm doing as well. That's why I'm still working at a fiat bank, so to say, while also being a Bitcoiner, just because I have to be humble myself, I have to be humble myself as well, because I really don't know where the future will be at,
Yeah, definitely. Second to last question, Pascal. With these treasury companies, do you guys also see interest by companies approaching you and going like, we've seen what Strategy has done, what Metaplanet has done, like, where's the money at, bro? We want to do the same thing, or is this just totally out of the ballpark for now?
Yeah, this is totally out of the picture. We don't see any interest, from companies at least, pulling something like this off. I think a lot of people are still very skeptical and are like, okay, this is not going to work. And some other might believe, okay, what Strategy this is a one-term play that cannot be really successfully be replicated. And I myself, I'm very cautious when it comes to these Bitcoin treasury companies. I feel like having Bitcoin on your balance sheet as a company makes total sense. Less noise, more signal. With my podcast I started, now that I'm racking in the first sort of money from sponsors, I'm also putting this in Bitcoin, because I want to keep my treasury. Especially I have sponsors out of the US, and they pay me in US dollar, and sometimes I have a contract for 12 months and they're only paying quarterly. But I fix the amount already today. In 12 months, the dollar might have lost 10 or 20% against the Swiss franc. That's why I really have to keep it in Bitcoin to make up for this. And so I think more and more companies will really do this, because it's just, again, it's the better play in the end to have Bitcoin as a treasury asset. But this doesn't have to mean that they will then have to relentlessly sort of dilute their own stock and try with every inch and iota that they have to squeeze out more and more money to buy Bitcoin, And I mean, if it's just your operating cash that you sweep into Bitcoin, this might already be enough. And then I think you have a few jurisdictions where it's really hard to buy Bitcoin, or for some companies like Japan, where you also have the tax system that's maybe disadvantaging to Bitcoin. And there it totally makes sense to have something like MetaPlanet, a company that you then can buy. But then in other
like
markets,
in the UK, where you see it that they cannot even hold the spot Bitcoin ETF. So
exactly, in the UK, it makes sense. But in Switzerland, again, I've also heard rumors that some people are trying to start a company, that they feel like, oh, we want to start the MicroStrategy or the strategy of Switzerland. I'm not so sure, because in Switzerland, we have great access, Bitcoin tax-wise. It's not really that hard, not complicated. So I'm not sure if you would really have a moat here as a Swiss strategy and really rake in money like they do. So I'd be more skeptical. And so that's why I feel like a lot of people intuitively understand this, that this might also now be the new ICO hype in that sense, while some will make it and will be the biggest companies of the world, I guess, and so, but that's sort of my 2 cents. Yeah,
and I guess that it also depends. If you're a company that has a very strong operating business, putting 2, 3, 5% aside in Bitcoin is potentially a no-brainer, I think. I mean, personally, you could do more, obviously, because there's always the room for improvement. But then you don't really need to outplay the fiat game, because it works in your favor. And for any Swiss company who's eager to put, obviously, Bitcoin on their balance sheet, reach out to Relai Business over here. Use code JKLNZ if you want to save some fees. And reach us out, because as you mentioned, Pascal, there is, I think, no need to get into these kind of hypothetical situations and really into high finance at this point. Just start a treasury.
Just one quick thing to add. I also asked Ricardo recently for a podcast that I did with Ricardo Salinas. I asked him, you have so many different companies in Mexico, why don't you put Bitcoin on your balance sheet? And his argument was like, I'm so profitable when it comes to my operating business that I want to reinvest into the business, and that's what I see. And then my argument, I didn't ask him this because I didn't have that much time, but I would have gone, okay, but then you have to be of the belief that you outperform Bitcoin. And maybe he really is of the belief that with his company he can outperform Bitcoin. You never know. But it just goes to show that even a Bitcoin maxi like him, who really, I think, understands Bitcoin at a deep level, he's like, maybe I already have too much Bitcoin, even though we know all the meme, you can never have enough Bitcoin, and that's actually true. But there's maybe no rational argument. If he would really rationally go at this, he would say, I would have to put all my money in Bitcoin. But then you have the same argument with Bitcoin startups. Why invest into Bitcoin startups if you can really invest just in Bitcoin? And so it's always, that's again, the world is not as rational as some people believe. And that's why I think there's more granularity to all of this than we usually think. So that was just a point I wanted to add.
Fascinating. But yeah, it made the point I made before even more clear. Pascal, we end every Relai Bitcoin podcast on a very tough question. You don't have to answer it in specifics. You can also not answer it if you choose to. But out of your liquid wealth, how much of that is actually in Bitcoin? Because we can put you on the spot now with being a Bitcoiner.
Yeah. Well, I've never really calculated it, but I would imagine it's north of 80% in the end. Yeah. And it's basically because, like with many people, when you have started accumulating early, I mean, the wealth has just 10x, whatever x, and then at some point you find yourself with all this Bitcoin, and then you're like, wow, but I don't see any reason to sell, and that's why, you end up having most of your money in Bitcoin, yeah.
Nice. And if anyone is keen to follow you, where's the best place to reach out?
The best place would probably be on X, I'm there at Pahueg, P-A-H-U-E-G. That's my... P-A-H-U-E-G, yeah, that's exactly it. So it's sort of a weird name. And then on LinkedIn as well, or you can text me on whatever social media. I'm even on Nostr nowadays, how nice. Your typical Bitcoiner has. BitChat, maybe I'll have to try it out as well. And so, yeah, I mean, if somebody wants to find me, they can definitely find me. And also on YouTube, as I said, the podcast is called Less Noise, More Signal. There you'll find it as well.
Perfect. I'll make sure to link everything below. Pascal, it's been way too long when we haven't seen in person, so I look forward to catching up real soon. And for all of our lovely listeners, as always, thanks for taking your time, and we'll see you in the next one.
Yes, thanks a lot, Joel. See you.
Hey, this is Joel again from the Relai team. First of all, thanks for listening or watching to the podcast. We really appreciate your help here. If you want to actually help us out further, you can leave us a 5-star review in the Apple Podcasting Store, in Spotify, on YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts, because this way we'll actually reach more people with this fantastic content. And I'll see you in the next one.